Canada's largest airport, the late 80s and early 90s. Years passed during a theft without any evidence to help identify the perpetrators. Requirements: set your headphones, get some popcorn, and take a seat. We're set to go, ladies and gentlemen. Toronto's Pearson Airport is Canada's largest international airport. The biggest freight terminals are at the airport. Shipments are received from all around the world. Every day, millions of things happen. It's an endless process. The products are all kept in one big, roomy warehouse to make room for as many shipments as feasible. There were numerous things kept in storage. Anything that comes to mind can be found. It is like a child entering a huge toy store. Given that the facility is guarded by more than 100 police officers, anyone who has ever considered stealing from it will undoubtedly be apprehended as soon as they leave. But in the late 1980s and early 1990s, the airport management found that numerous high-end product skids, which included computers, hard drives, cameras, and many other precious items valued at up to $500,000, were going missing. As soon as possible, the police organized a task force to figure out how the robbers were able to get past the airport's strict security measures and grab skids of merchandise without being detected. Everything around that boundary is safe. Everywhere you look, you can see adjacent security cameras. Guards for security are also present. They check your tag to make sure it's legitimate before they let you in. It's a little unclear. Police inquiries proved fruitless as goods continued to vanish for years. Despite all these measures, they made a valiant effort, but eventually failed to stop this crime. The airport administration's tardy detection of the stolen cargo was one of many factors that contributed to the drawn-out investigation process. As I previously stated, the building was so large and expansive that nobody could notice what was missing. Every day, numerous shipments came in and went out. Trying to track down the stolen shipment was a big task. In addition, it's the 1990s. A system for storing inventories does not exist. Thus, the entire procedure resembled trying to find a needle in a haystack. Because of this, the police received the information too late, which made their job more difficult. They said that a week had passed since the call was made to the police. Any evidence that may have been collected at the site would have vanished due to the delay in alerting the authorities. The warehouse workers possessed information that the police did not, nor did they know where to begin. Even though the police were unable to obtain any information from them, they were quite circumspect in some of their responses. Those employees resembled a family or gang. Since they have been working together for a long time, they know each other extremely well, so even if the cops tried to infiltrate them, it wouldn't succeed. The police felt helpless and unable to stop the thefts, which continued for years. Actually, the authorities concluded that the robberies were the work of an organized crime group that operated out of the airport. They think that carrying out such procedures takes a great deal of effort and time. The cargo operations must be completely familiar to the robbers. They needed to know truck drivers, managers, supervisors, and security personnel. Therefore, all of these factors contributed to the perception that a sizable portion of the airport staff was stealing the goods. The police were mistaken nonetheless, as it eventually came to light that the crimes were carried out by a single person who was neither a director nor a supervisor, and who therefore had intimate knowledge of the airport's workings. A straightforward truck driver was responsible for the crimes. He had figured out a way to get past security, steal more than $7 million worth of cargo, and sell it all over the world. How did he manage to pull it off? Don't worry, I know you're curious too. I have the solution. Let us first find out the identity of this man. Ho Lam Ong is the name of the truck driver. He is a Vietnamese immigrant who arrived in Toronto, Canada in the late 1980s with just $50. Our person's motivation was a desire to become wealthy. He was willing to pay any price to accomplish his objective. He started by becoming a part of the Asian community. He was friendly to everyone, which made making friends easy for him. He made a wonderful impression on people and developed a nice reputation by always smiling when he greeted them, earning him the moniker Smiley. Soon after, Mr. Smiley met with another woman who was also a Vietnamese immigrant. Teresa is her name. Their innate chemistry allowed them to forge a solid bond early on since they were in tune with one another. And shortly after, they got married. Mr. Smiley and Benny, Teresa's teenage stepson, moved into her flat. Teresa worked for a shipping company where she had hired her husband for a truck driving position. It was Mr. Smiley's responsibility to collect products from Pearson Airport and deliver them to establishments around the city. However, the pay for this employment was only $1,600 a month, which was insufficient for Mr. Smiley to fulfill his ambition of becoming wealthy. In the past, Mr. Smiley personally delivered the goods, which allowed him to gain a decent understanding of the item's costs after pulling up to the shipping address, getting out of his truck, taking the goods, and entering the store. He realized that if he could just take a couple of the extremely costly goods he carried and sell them, he would surely become wealthy. However, he couldn't steal from it because it was his responsibility to deliver the cargo. Then he understood that going straight into the warehouse was the best spot to steal in secret. However, he didn't have a pass that allowed him to enter the warehouses, so he had to show the security guards at the airport both his ID card and his pass when he arrived. He can't leave the warehouse without this card dangling around his neck the entire time. He was only able to access a small portion of the warehouse with his ticket, and he had to wait for the workers to bring the goods before loading them into the truck. Mr. Smiley was consequently compelled to approach the employees more closely. Since he had always been smiling, he already had a good relationship with them. All he needed to do was strengthen it a little bit, and he discovered that the best way to accomplish so was to really invite them to dinner, give them gifts, and other such actions. To accomplish his goal, Mr. Smiley persisted in fortifying his bonds with the employees. Among the things he concentrated on was identifying the employees who were most in need of financial assistance, as well as those who had debts and bills to settle. He was positive that this group of employees was a simple mark. Mr. Smiley once approached one of the employees as he was loading his truck, asking if he could toss in an extra skid of merchandise covertly for a payment of $2,000. The employee was taken aback. The amount of money tempted him, and he quickly accepted the offer despite knowing that they wouldn't find the lost cargo for a while and that it wouldn't be trackable. When Mr. Smiley returned home, he checked the package the worker had given him and discovered it was filled with electronics that may have cost up to $100,000. Here, we are discussing a profitable investment. He invested $2,000 to make $100,000, but he still needed customers for his goods. To solve this, he started establishing relationships with computer store owners and selling them his items at prices that are naturally cheaper than the going rates. Once more, Mr. Smiley gave one of the employees money so that he could load an additional skid of goods. As usual, he was able to sell the garment cargo to some of his friends and acquaintances for a lesser price, even though it was worth less than the gadgets. Thus, events continued as usual. His empire started to expand as a result of the workers he bought off to help him with his theft scheme, as well as the store owners or customers he sold his stolen products. Even still, he was faced with an enormous challenge. He was unaware of the goods he had taken, be they clothing, electronics, or other items, because the stolen cargo was selected at random. To put it another way, he had to find new customers for his stolen goods every time he stole cargo, which complicated his retailing operation. He chose to collaborate with her wife, his accomplice in the thefts, to find a solution to this issue. As we previously stated, they were employed by the same company, so his wife used her position. Teresa was privy to comprehensive data regarding the shipment that was arriving. She could tell him the flight it arrived on, how much it costs, and where it will be kept in storage. Using Teresa and Mr. Smiley's information, he carefully examined which warehouse was receiving, which consignment, He compared this to lists of workers that he was certain he could buy off. In this way, he structured his crimes and made it easier for him to sell the stolen products. Occasionally, they are sold before they are taken. Mr. Smiley started focusing on pricey cargo to boost his earnings and grow his enterprise. But the more cargo he took, the more problems he had as a result of the quantity of stolen stuff. It was enormous, which made delivery challenging. Thus, he chose to enlist Benny, his stepson, as one of his collaborators. Benny and Mr. Smiley both treated him like a son. He held him in the highest regard. Benny outperformed his stepfather as a salesperson when he took over the distribution of computer accessories and equipment. He formed relationships with proprietors of computer stores. Most store owners assumed they were unquestionably purchasing legal items from a reliable source because Benny used to pose as the owner of a reputable shipping company and display invoices and business cards using the alias Su Yang to win their trust. Benny was able to sell the stolen goods quickly and easily, but the Smileys were still having storage problems as a result of the series of theft activities that resulted in the buildup of the goods. Mr. Smiley needed a secure location to store his belongings, and since it was unsafe to rent public storage, he purchased 2 nearby homes, lived in one, and used the other as a storage facility. The Smiley family brought cargo each day, which they kept in their home. The Smileys' repeated arrivals and departures with their belongings would often pique the curiosity of the neighbors, who found it odd and peculiar. Mr. Smiley's currency was his amiable demeanor. He was a kind guy. He was always friendly with his neighbors. They respected him, and he respected them. He frequently even gave them gifts, and he was impervious to scrutiny because of the way he treated others. He would simply respond that he worked in the shipping sector and occasionally utilized his home as a warehouse if someone asked him why he had all those items stored in his home. Both his empire and his distribution problems were progressively growing. His issue was one of supply and demand. There were more buyers than he had things, therefore everything in his home was extra. Luckily, the late 1990s saw the start of the internet revolution, which led to the appearance of several websites, including eBay, which allows users to buy and sell goods from anywhere in the world and register without a valid address, bank account, or identity. Customer happiness was the most important factor, regardless of the product's origin or method of manufacture. The customer's satisfaction with the transaction and receiving what they were promised were the primary priorities. Taking advantage of the website, Mr. Smiley began selling his pilfered products, and sales poured in from all over the world as well as Canada thanks to the pricing he offered. The Smileys began packing and shipping from their home or warehouse, which streamlined, expedited, and increased the profitability of the selling process. Thanks to eBay, the Smiley family was able to reach 19,000 sales, increasing their fortune and enabling them to maintain and expand their empire for 13 years. Don't you think this is unbelievable? Both the airport management and the police were unaware of the thefts for almost 10 years. Because he saw the cargo workers as the backbone of his business, Mr. Smiley insisted on allowing them to be satisfied through presents, bill payments, support when needed, or even just bribery. He was able to maintain his operations and ensure that these employees were faithful to him in this way. Even after stepping up their efforts and going undercover, the inquiry into this case remained unresolved for nearly 13 years. During this period, the authorities were not able to identify the perpetrator of those thefts. All they could do was watch as goods were loaded onto trucks. They had no means of knowing if this was normal business or if it was being taken. The police were unable to reduce the number of suspects on their lists because of this ambiguity. Since there were hundreds of warehouse employees, their job was rendered nearly impossible, and Mr. Smiley was able to remain hidden. When one of the proprietors of a computer store complained that someone had broken into his store and robbed him, the police eventually received their first lead in November 2001. Hard disks were found among the stolen goods when the police swiftly went to search the establishment. The hard disk serial numbers from the airport robbery and the computer store theft matched, the police found. Police have tracked down some of the stolen products for the first time. The business owner was questioned by the authorities about the source of the hard disks. The store's owners revealed that a man by the name of Joe oversaw a shipping company that provided the hard drives. Joe provided them with his phone number for communication. The police put Benny under surveillance as soon as they checked the number and found that it belonged to him. The cops greatly benefited from the surveillance. It was intense and provided them with a wealth of information. When Benny opened the garage, they noticed a wall of things in addition to seeing him gather items from their home. After realizing that they had at last located the burglar for whom they had been searching for years, the police discovered that Mr. Smiley was the home's owner. Until they have enough evidence to form a compelling case, the police wait to make an arrest. They were curious as to how he was able to pilfer so many items over such a lengthy period. An entire squad of detectives worked on this case, monitoring Mr. Smiley at all times. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, this gave the police comprehensive insight into the methods used to carry out the thefts. They trailed him from the moment he picked up his truck from the shipping company to the airport, where he loaded it, made the delivery of the intended items, and returned the pilfered cargo to his residence. The cops were prepared to act following all of this. On December 13, 2001, they burst into Smiley's home and took the whole family into custody. Mr. Smiley, his stepson Benny, and his wife Teresa. The sheer amount of stuff inside the residence astounded the police. It was a warehouse, to be exact. Not only was there an enormous quantity of cash, but it was also scattered throughout the house, including beneath the bed, on the couch, in Benny's room, and on the stairs. Up to $1.02 million in cash was discovered. Before the trial, Mr. Smiley consented to enter a guilty plea on the understanding that Teresa and Benny would be freed from custody. Smiley, Teresa, and Benny were all detained on suspicion of possessing stolen items. The police accepted the plea offer after Mr. Smiley cooperated, confessed, and gave back almost $6 million in cash and property. As a result, he received a reduced sentence and served a 2-year prison term. As the video comes to a close, please remember to hit the bell button, subscribe, and like it if you enjoyed it.